Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 93 of ReelBlend, a podcast that is taking things to the next level.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yes.
My name is Sean O'Connell, and I am the managing director here at CinemaBlend. I want to point out off the bat that my audio and Kevin's audio might sound a little bit off this week, whereas Jake's will sound pristine because Kevin and I are south of the border in Mexico covering the Jumanji junket, and we're both in our individual hotel rooms, which is odd. Hi, I can see Kevin right there, even though he's near me.
Yeah, it's a little strange
not here.
that I can walk over and physically see Sean right now, but Gabe has us, and Gabe rightfully so, who does an amazing job producing our
In
show.
his defense.
We have to be in separate rooms because of our audio, so we are in Cabo.
The
San
imaginary
Lucas.
Gabe.
Yeah.
That is a very funny. Are we reading that review? Yeah, that's very funny. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. But we're down here covering Jumanji. We'll get into more details about what that is later.
Hope you two
in
are having
this
a
episode.
wonderful time.
Yes. Well, listen. Hey, we wanted you to come.
It's sweeps, dude.
It is Sweet Week. In this week's episode, we are going to be reviewing the Tom Hanks film, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and we have an interview with the amazing Jamie Lee Curtis on behalf of her new movie, Knives Out, and the story behind how that interview came together is unbelievable. I'm going to let Kevin set that up when we get to that point of the show. Before that, let's get to the introductions, of course, and I'll start with Jake Hamilton, who sadly is not with us on this trip. He's back home in Chicago, holding down the fort for Fox 32. Hello, Jake. How are
Yeah,
you?
to quote Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty, not during sweeps week. Couldn't go.
But they had you at a Die Hard bar.
They had me. I did go to a Die Hard bar, and I thought of you. I thought of you.
Well, and the fact that I didn't hear
basically the
anything
same
about
thing.
it after
I sent you a
went
bunch of pictures, but they didn't get through.
means that it's
because you're in Mexico.
No, they didn't go through. Oh, that's probably what it is. Well, the other voice that you will hear on this week's episode of ReelBlend is Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C., who did something significant today that he will tell you about. He'll tell you about it later. Don't mention it now, BDK. We can't. We're going to get yelled at. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Sean. I'm keeping it brief. I honestly wanted to do that just to get Gabe's reaction, because normally I'll go on, which I am right now, going on for another 30 or 40 seconds, and Gabe's like, wrap it up. So I was just like, hi, Sean. I don't even have time to say hi to Jake. Can I say hi to Jake, Gabe, real quick? Hi, Jake. Hey,
I feel like the time that he didn't want you to take by going on over something,
joke.
you just filled that exact time by talking about not
was the
going
joke.
on over something.
Then let's get right into the show. This is episode number 93. We are going to start off with the conversation of the weekly poll. So this is a poll that we put up on Fridays. You guys weigh in, and then we discuss it in the most recent show. And since we're going to discuss A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood and Tom Hanks, the question last week, Jakey, this is right up your alley. How many Oscars should Tom Hanks have by now? So, Jake, I'll let you guess what you think won after I give you the choices. The choices are 2 is plenty, because he has Forrest Gump and Philadelphia.
Right, back
People
to
need
back,
to be reminded.
back to back. Remember how big of a deal it was when he's the last major actor to win back to back Oscars.
Yes, that's true. I think that's true. Why do I think Christoph Waltz won twice?
Not back to back. I mean, for 2 Tarantino movies, but not back.
Yeah,
to back.
he won for Bastards
Gotcha.
and Django, but I think they were 3 or 4 years apart, right, Jake? Or 2 or 3 years maybe.
Got it.
Yeah, a couple years apart. Yeah.
All right, so first choice is 2 is plenty. Second choice is 3. And the third choice is 4 or more. Which one do you think?
I think people like Tom Hanks as much as I do, so I think they chose 4 or more.
Ah, very good. 48%. So the movie that we would at least throw out and say that he deserved, I think, anyway, a nomination for that he did, or a win for, is Castaway. And he did not win that year. But then, I mean, you can make an argument for Saving
That was his
Private
last
Ryan,
nomination.
too. Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
I revisited
I think you can
Castaway
make an argument
recently.
for Saving Private Ryan.
I love Castaway. I didn't love it the first time I saw it because I was really young and I was being immature. And with my friends, we saw it in a theater. We were just goofing around the whole time. And when I finally sat down and watched it as an adult, like Castaway, that film should not work. But because you have Zemeckis and Hanks, it's just amazing. It's such a great movie.
The moment when he, emerges with the huge beard and throws the spear through the fish is like that. It's such an incredible reveal. And I know we've said this on the show multiple times that Zemeckis was able to sort of go off and make what lies beneath while he waited for Hanks to grow out that bit. Like, imagine a studio giving a filmmaker that type of freedom.
That was
to
our
shoot
first
half the movie.
That was our first
come back.
viewing of Aquaman. It was amazing. You know, it was incredible.
Kind of did look just like him. Kevin, you know where I saw Castaway for the very first time?
Where?
At the Uptown Theater in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
a very famous theater for anybody who's listening to our show that doesn't know the DC area. They used to have it was Cinerama, right? I think it was three projectors back in the day.
It was, yes.
And it was a very famous theater that's still open today. I still go there, not regularly, but if you go there, it feels like you're back in like old school cinemas you went to in the 90s or 80s. It's very, very cool.
Castaway is the first DVD I ever bought.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, do you know do you know the other? We've mentioned all the films that he's been nominated for except for one. Do you know which one that he was nominated for that we haven't discussed yet?
Big?
What were the three we've mentioned so
Yes.
far? Oh, he got nominated for Big?
Well,
Yeah,
He
that
got
was his
nominated
first
for Big.
nomination.
His
You know
first
what's
one.
an
I'd almost argue he should have won that.
Underrated Tom Hanks movie? Money Pit. One of my favorite comedies of all time.
great
I
movie.
love that movie.
Right,
Love
that's
that
tremendous. All right, so back to the poll. 4 or more got 48%. 2 is plenty, got 34%, and then 19% voted 3. I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out with A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, because when all three of us saw it together in Toronto, and when we came out of that screening, got into a screaming match, mainly me screaming, and the other guys telling me I was wrong, that Hanks would be contending in best actor, that he would go lead, because he's freaking Tom Hanks. And I understand that the structure of the movie is such that it's not necessarily his film. But we've seen category fraud, over the years from the Oscars, and I just thought he would throw himself into lead to stay out of that supporting actor category.
One of
it's
Jack
stacked.
Nicholson's 3 Oscars is for supporting.
No, I'm not saying that it's bad about supporting. I think it's fine that he shows up in that. But they're advertising that movie as come see Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers.
Agreed.
And it's not necessarily what that movie is. To the point where you guys saw that Jeopardy clip.
Oh my
Yes.
god! I legit thought there must be something wrong with their buttons. I was like, there had to be a malfunction where like their buttons didn't work. How did they not know who that was?
I don't know. I've heard people sort of try to defend the contestants and saying that the monitor that they show the video on is like far away from.
But don't you know that there's a movie coming? Like even my mom, who isn't a avid moviegoer, knows that there's a movie coming out on Friday where Tom Hanks plays Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, so Gabe is saying we should explain what happened for people who didn't see it, and that's why we have a producer, because we're so wrapped up in talking about the show. Thank you, Gabe. Essentially, there was a Jeopardy question where they showed Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and all three of the contestants completely whiffed on guessing who it was. Now, does he immerse himself in the role? Sure, I guess you could say that, but I mean, still, the marketing efforts of Sony to get A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood out there for the people is such that they should know at this point that Tom Hanks was playing Mr.
But
Rogers.
I'd argue that
in
this
the
was
movie.
almost better for Sony because every news station in the country aired that clip where they couldn't guess. So that clip went 100 times more viral than they expected it to.
It wasn't calculated, though.
No, I don't think it was calculated, no.
Sony asked them not to answer the questions so they get more coverage. All right, Kevin, I want you to be able to throw to this week's interview. We want to get right to it. It's Jamie Lee Curtis, one of the stars of Rian Johnson's new whodunit film, Knives Out. An incredible cast. And Kevin was out doing the junket and then landed on this amazing opportunity. Kevin, tell everybody how this came to be, because it's pretty mind-blowing in that this just doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, this was crazy. So basically, we had booked Rian Johnson for our podcast, and he'll be a guest next week. If that's a spoiler, I apologize. But yeah, Rian Johnson's going to be on our show next week. There you go. So when we did Rian Johnson the day before the press junket for Knives Out. So I flew in Thursday, I did the premiere, and then the day before on Friday, there was an interview opportunity for the podcast, which Jeff from CinemaBlend came out and graciously recorded audio for, which was really cool because shout out to Jeff McCobb, who is the biggest Rian Johnson fan I've ever met in my life. The guy knew everything about his history, his films. He was on his forums back in the day with Brick and Brothers Bloom. So it was cool and Jeff genuinely drove and over 45 minutes to an hour to get to the hotel where we were at to actually do the interview. And we did it, and Ryan had a great time. It was really, really nice. And you guys are going to hear the interview next week. So the next day comes around and we're doing the press junket for Knives Out. And this is like some of the most insane talent pairings I've seen in a long time. It was Daniel Craig and Jamie Lee Curtis together, Chris Evans and Ana de Armas, and you had Don Johnson. I'm trying to remember all the rooms now off the top of my head. There were so many interviews that took place that day. Catherine Langford and Jaden Martell and Ryan Johnson, of course. So I walk into Daniel Craig and Jamie Lee Curtis's room, and as I walk in, I sit down and I tell them how much I love the film. And at this point, I'd seen the film twice. And to me, it's arguably one of the greatest audience films I've ever seen in my life. And I saw it at TIFF and I saw it at the premiere. And I've never seen an audience so, in a full packed house, it's one of the most fun movies to watch with an audience because everyone's like screaming and laughing and trying to guess what's going on, the whodunit aspect of it. So Jamie Lee Curtis, I tell her this and she says, "Have you met Ryan Johnson?" I said, "Actually, yeah, he was just on our film podcast, ReelBlend," and she got like super interested in, and I don't want to take her out of context, but she was very interested in the podcast. She seemed like she wanted to know more about it. And at the end of the interview, they were wrapping me up, and I was like, I have to go, because I only had 2 questions, because by the time we only had 4.5 minutes for the interview. She goes, "Oh my God, that's it?" She goes, "You need your own show." And I was like, well, I have a podcast with my friends, and you should come on sometime. I said that jokingly, like in the sense of like, of course I want Jamie Lee Curtis to come on our show, but there was nothing in my mind.
You throw that out.
You throw it out in a way where you're like, "Hey, you should be a guest sometime, right?" Like it's one of those like,
yeah.
And then nicely she goes, "Oh, of course." Like, and you don't know if that's truthful in the sense of like, I would not that she would lie, but would it ever actually come to fruition? So in the end of it, she literally shouted out to me, "Find my publicist Heidi," and I was like, okay. So I leave the room. And Daniel Craig's sitting there the whole time. And Daniel Craig, by the way, I want to give him a shout out because he was
Daniel Craig never volunteered to come on the show.
I know. That's the funny part about it. Is he was sitting there the whole time, and I was like, I was like, "You too?"
And he was like, eh.
He goes, "I have no time to die."
He was like, no. He said,
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
But
Dude, like seriously, like why am I even on this show?
Come on. Wait, what happened, Jake?
Christ.
What happened?
Nothing. Once again, I'm dishing
He
out
had no
gold.
time to podcast. Jake told a pun, and it went over like a lead balloon.
Oh.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, I do. It's becoming a thing now where like if Jake gives a pun, we react.
So mad.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's like, anyway. So so Jamie Lee Curtis.
I don't like that that's become a thing. I don't approve of that show tradition.
So I go outside of the room and I walk out, and Jamie Lee Curtis's publicist follows me out of the room and says, "When do you want to do this?" I'm like, "Is she serious?" She's like, "Yes." So I had a 1:30 flight, and I said, "Listen, I will stay here until the end of the day if she'll do it today." And because the other option was a possible phoner later on or a Skype interview later on, which I was worried about. Actually, 1, happening, and 2, the logistics of it all. You know what I mean? Like, it's always better to do things in person if we can. 10 minutes later, she meets me down the hallway where Ryan Johnson's room is and says, 5 o'clock, you're in. I said, okay. I mean, that's insane. Wait, you're saying Jamie Lee Curtis is going to sit down for a podcast interview with me at 5 o'clock at the end of her day when she's been doing press nonstop all day long. So the interview you're about to hear happened primarily because Jamie Lee Curtis is amazing. And she made this happen. She told her publicist to make it happen. Anyway, so this is the interview. It happened because of Jamie Lee Curtis. So shout out to her. Shout out to her publicist, Heidi. Shout out to Lionsgate for making this happen. But yeah, it was absolutely surreal. So Sean, can I toss to this myself, or do you want to ultimately toss to it?
You just did, brother.
Right,
here's Jamie Lee Curtis.
Here's Jamie Lee Curtis. Check it out. Well, thank you for joining the ReelBlend podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
An absolute honor. I'm going to start off because we're a filmmaking podcast specifically, and you've worked with some of the greatest directors of all time. And you look at someone like John Carpenter, and you look at a director like Ryan Johnson. They're both phenomenal filmmakers. I'm curious what you took from that set with Carpenter as an actor that you still use now today, a lesson that you learned on that Carpenter set that you still utilize now as an actor.
Huh. Look at you going deep diving at the end of a busy day. You know, John was the first time I'd been in a movie.
Yep.
And it was a movie with a lot of, it kind of had a pace to it, and it kind of accelerated into a frenzy. And I remember kind of working out a system with him where I understood where we were, because of course movies aren't filmed in
linear order.
Necessarily in linear order. Sometimes they are, but low budget movie, never. And we worked out as sort of literally an intensathon, kind of a numbered system throughout the script so that I could know kind of where he wanted it to be. And I think I sort of did it and went to him and said, will you look at this and make sure that that's okay? The truth of the matter is, it was my first movie. We made it in 17 days. It was just fast and furious.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot to do. It was a beautiful character to play. I'm not sure there was much more than that I got from John. The only word John really wanted was vulnerability. And that was something that at 19, I'm not sure I really understood. I'm not saying I had to look it up, but I mean, I didn't really know what he meant. And yet, of course, I saw the movie in a theater, in a very satisfying screening in Hollywood, where Laurie has gotten the call from Linda across the street, and she leaves the house and locks the door, puts the keys in her pocket, and then goes across the street, and there's that long sort of walk across the street, and then it's a Steadicam shot on Laurie, on her POV, on Laurie, and it's just this slow sort of meandering. The music is coming in, the wind is blowing, and there was a woman who stood up in the middle of the theater and screamed out loud in Hollywood like, "Don't go in there!" And I realized in that moment that all of what John wanted to do was get them on Laurie's side. Make a character that people wanted to take care of, and they wanted to protect her.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what vulnerability meant to me.
That's incredible. And you mentioned earlier when we were talking in the junket about waiting a week to film those moments where you're waking up in Knives Out. And you were not waiting, but it was scheduled that way where you wouldn't film those moments until a week after. So you said you didn't go home, you just kind of stayed.
Well, I mean, I was living in Boston.
Yeah.
I'm not at home. I'm not the star of this movie on any level, Knives Out. I am one of a cast of 15. And I couldn't say, oh, by the way, you have to schedule my Linda waking up. Why do I have to wait a week? You know, it was just what the schedule was. I wasn't going to question it. It meant I was basically staying in Boston in this hotel room. It happened to be right when Halloween was out.
Oh, wow.
We shot from October till December last year.
Oh, interesting.
And so Halloween had just come out. And so, you know, I had this obviously big hit movie out, and it was a little complicated because if I walked around, I would do nothing but take selfies all day long. So I was a little isolated, but ultimately I waited around to do this one little shot of me in bed waking up.
It's one of the best scenes in the movie, by the way.
Funny,
so it was worth it, yeah.
But what I'm saying is even the little shot of Christopher Plummer walking upstairs, and you see Linda, and then you see Joni, and you see Christopher Plummer go up the stairs, which is a linking piece, was another one where we didn't shoot that. There was I had 4 days off, and then I got dressed, went, and all I had to do was basically lean out a door and then go in and shut the door.
That's amazing.
Again, preceding that sleeping scene. But that's just, these are the little linking pieces. It's like a puzzle piece. It was just a puzzle piece.
You know, I've been watching your movies all my life, and one of the beauties of the filmmakers you've worked with is the filmmaking is so amazing. And there's a shot in this movie that blows my mind, and I've seen it twice now. It's a shot when Anna, or Anna's character, gets the news about the will. And there's a dolly shot of the camera sitting there still. As she walks out of the house, they pick up the camera, and it turns into this immersive anxiety, like off-the-shoulder shot, which was jarring, but perfectly enough where it immersed you in the anxiety of that moment for her. That shot blew my mind. I'm curious, that this film or any movie you've ever worked in, was there like a camera movement that you remember going, oh my gosh, that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen?
Well, sure, of course, and it's going to go back to Halloween. You see, the last shot of so Halloween was made very quickly in March of 1978.
But set in October, so you had to add the leaves.
But it was set in October. So there was Not a lot of foliage on the trees, certainly no dead foliage, and we didn't have a lot of money, so there was a big bag of leaves that they would throw out with a fan and then rake up and put it back in the bag, but that's not it. So the original scary house that we see from the beginning of the movie is the way the house actually looked in real life.
Oh, wow.
So that old kind of creepy house that Lori and Tommy walk by and he says, you can't go in there. She goes, I'm just dropping keys. The way that house looks kind of creepy. That was the way the house really was. But in order to make it look like the house at the beginning of the movie, we, the filmmakers, the actors, the art department, everybody, whitewashed the house, painted the house, hung curtains, put wallpaper up, furnished it, and then that night they shot the opening shot, which is the Steadicam.
One of the greatest shots ever.
Right.
Oh.
But it was new at the time.
Yeah.
You know, this was the technology was new, that Steadicam was new, and I stayed outside and watched this tableau happen where they would say they were rolling, but they started in the back. You know, they start in the kitchen where Deborah Hill, who wrote the movie, she's the hand with the little clown costume.
I did not know that.
That's Deborah's hand.
Wow.
And then it goes into the house. And then because we also didn't have a lot of money for electronic equipment, we had just a few lights. And so there would be a grip or an electric standing there. The camera would pass by the light, then they would go into another room and move it. And I watched the whole thing from outside, which was thrilling to watch, except when they would have to cut and there would be that groan of, oh, they didn't get it. Oh. And the reason I stayed around was at the end of that shot, we wrapped the movie Halloween, and Dean Cundy gave me the slate that he used on the movie.
Do you still have it?
I do, of course I have it.
Where do you keep something like that?
All you have to do is look back on my Instagram. David Gordon Green and I are holding it in the announcement picture from last year. I'll find it for you, Dawn.
I will find that.
You keep talking and I'll find it.
But going back to Knives Out in regards to this movie and what Ryan does really well with his script, it's airtight and it's a script that really is brilliantly written. As an actor, though, you know the ending. You know the whodunit aspect of it. What is the key to not giving any clue away in your performance that would trigger the audience to think a certain way? Because Ryan has it designed very specifically.
Yeah,
do you
know what? There's nothing we could do.
It's just the director's
It's totally
aspect.
his world, and it's so tightly written.
Did you guess it when you read it? Before?
Well, I go to the end. I'm one of those people.
Oh.
I know. Don't hate me.
Wait.
I'm looking at a camera like I'm on a camera.
You go to the last page?
I do.
That's the first thing you do in a script?
No, I did on this one.
Wow.
Like 10 pages in, I was like, okay, I have to.
That's
I knew.
amazing.
And, what can I say?
But when you watch the film with an audience, do you start to see people figuring it out in a way where, like when you watch it?
No, but they don't figure it out.
They don't. I didn't get it
yet.
Yeah.
To meet one person in the sort of promotion of this movie, not one person walked in and said, I put it together.
Wow.
Not one person.
Wow. I haven't put it together.
Right. I don't think it's possible.
No.
I don't think anyone could.
It's actually great the second time when you can actually look for the clues.
Right.
It's almost like Jordan Peele's Get Out.
Right,
Like,
and you
there's so many
start to
things.
see the clues.
Yeah.
But even then, it would be hard.
Ryan's one of my favorite filmmakers, and I'm curious, since you've worked with all these great directors in your career, when you do work with a filmmaker for the first time, will you go out of your way to watch their filmography before you work with them if you haven't seen it already?
I didn't with Ryan.
So have you seen Brick and Looper?
I saw Brick when I was living in Boston while shooting. I saw Brick, Looper, Brothers Grimm. I had seen Star Wars.
Right.
I had seen his Star Wars movie. But because that is this, long heralded storyline, I'm not going to get from that. I mean, I knew he was a great filmmaker from that, but I was not going to get from that his original brain.
What do you look for in the movies when you're watching them to help you work with the filmmaker?
Oh, I don't. You think I'm an intellectual.
Well, you're a great actor.
I'm a natural actor who really does very little cerebral work. I do a little bit in costuming or whatever. I'm not that person. I just show up and try to tell the truth. It doesn't matter. My method doesn't matter. My methodology doesn't matter. Ryan is a cinephile. I am not. That doesn't matter. Ryan is an intellectual. I am not. Doesn't matter.
I think you're an intellectual.
I'm not an intellectual. I am not a cerebral person. I'm an emotional, intuitive person. And it's not saying I'm not an autodidact and someone who has learned much in her later life, but I am not that person. And I have worked with terrible directors, people who had very little experience and made very few movies and a few bad ones in the very few they made. And it doesn't really matter to me because it's not my job. I'm lucky to have been able to be in a couple great movies.
This is something I wanted to ask you for a while. I actually brought this up to you briefly in an interview one time, but I didn't have a longer form to bring this up. When I was growing up, my parents were very interesting about what movies they let me watch as a kid. True Lies, I will never forget this because when I was growing up, I begged my parents to watch it because I loved James Cameron after seeing Terminator 2 for the first time. They waited for the film to come out on VHS, and when it came out, they said, Kevin, we're going to let you watch this entire film except for this particular dance scene that Jamie Lee Curtis has. And I said, so I looked at my parents, and at the time I was too young to kind of have this realization, but I said to my mom, and now that I'm looking back on it, I'm going, Mom and Dad, why was I allowed to watch all the violence? But that scene particularly was shielded from me. And I found it to be interesting because now I'm married, I don't have any kids yet, you have children. What do you think?
Grown children.
What do you think it is though about the idea? Like I remember my mom and dad being very negative towards anything sexual on screen.
And it was True Lies.
It was True Lies. Whatever movie it was, they would never let me watch anything that had anything sexually.
Well, that says a lot more about your parents.
Right, and this is I love my parents more than anything, but I find that interesting. Why do you think that was such a case where I could watch the R-rated violence but not watch that scene? Like, do you agree with that as a parent?
You know, I'm a parent, but a flawed parent, and of course I probably am contradictory. I would say there's a reason that movies are rated, and I remember I had I have a son, and he liked video games. And I remember the ratings on them.
T and M.
And there was a moment where he was young and he was playing T games. And there was a moment where it was made clear to me that was actually something not good for him. Because it was omnipotence. And omnipotence is not a healthy thing for a child, to feel that the rules don't apply to them.
Yeah.
And so I tried, that's hard to do as a parent, to take something back that you've given.
That you've already approved, kind of. Yeah,
right, but you have to learn to be able to say, I was wrong. I have thought about it, and I've made a mistake here, and I'm going to rectify the mistake, and it's going to piss you off, and I'm sorry it's going to piss you off, but it's the right thing to do. And that's an exaggerated thing, but there is something about showing children violence or showing children sexual situations that they are not sophisticated enough to really understand. And there's a reason why, for instance, even this movie, Knives Out, we've saying, it's a great movie, it's great for Thanksgiving family weekend, but we were doing a thing yesterday and we said something about families, and I was the one who went, it's not a family movie.
Not for younger kids, yeah.
This is not, and then we had the discussion of how young. And Michael Shannon, brilliant, said double digits.
So 10 and up.
10 and up, because I did a movie called My Girl. And in the movie My Girl, Macaulay Culkin, who at the time was the biggest movie star in the United States,
can't watch that
is
movie.
Swarmed by bees and dies.
Yep.
Now, I'm in the movie. It's a great little movie. It's beautifully directed. Howard Zieff, wonderful director. Columbia great movie. All of a sudden, it's starting to come out. I'm a marketing girl. I get to know all the marketing departments. I am very interested in marketing. I am a self-marketer. I wish somebody would just put me in a room and let me give opinions about marketing, because I'm very marketing skewed. And I remember they sent me the poster, and it's Macaulay Culkin and Anna Klumsky laughing. And it says, My Girl. And I wrote letters to the head of marketing, to the head of Columbia Pictures, saying, you cannot release this movie without a warning to parents.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, well, tough luck, honey. And I really went to bat, saying, I have a 5-year-old, and this movie should not be seen by kids who have not understood what life and death means, and that the issues of life and death are crucial to have been explored in your family before you see this movie. And I said that loud and clear. They did not listen to me. The movie was released and went on to make lots and lots of money.
I wish they listened to you. That movie devastated me. That was too much for me as a kid.
It's
way
too much.
Yeah.
So in that sense, about omnipotence, about rules applying, about understanding that we as creatures in artistic forms, be it a video game, a movie, a TV show, that there are things that are too sophisticated for children.
Yeah.
And I'm not demeaning children or saying they can't handle it, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
And so, I think violence, the kind of, I will tell you this, when I go out to talk about Halloween, or even when I was doing book tours for books for children, I would have people come, and often there would be Halloween fans who feel that they have to buy the $14.95 book in order to get FaceTime with me to really pull out the picture that they had from Halloween, which sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't, depending on the bookseller. And they will stand there with their 5-year-old kid and say to me, my Bobby loves Halloween, don't you, Bobby? Yes, I do. I love it so much. And I look at them and say, I have the meanest JLC. Are you out of your fucking mind? Look, you are the worst human being on the planet that you would show your child Halloween. And so I have a kind of a strong opinion, as you can tell, about when is correct and incorrect to expose a child to that stuff.
Thank you for answering that. I was always curious to get your thoughts on that, especially as a mother. This movie truly blew me away, and you look at your career, and I was mentioning all the great filmmakers you've worked with. Are there certain films that just remain super special to you? Are there I know every one of them probably has some, but are there particular ones? I know Halloween we talk about a lot, but is there one specifically or a couple specifically that you go, you know what, I'm so damn proud I was just part of those movies?
Question. I mean, no question. You're going to go to your top 5 because
what's your legacy in your mind? What do you look back and you look at your favorite movies?
Halloween was astonishing. Trading Places is a really funny movie, beautifully made. I think my beyond horror film career completely to John Landis, because each of the movies from that came after it came from John. True Lies is a great movie, and True Lies was, according to Jim, written for me, and so the freedom that I had in that movie to do what I do, whatever that is that I do, he completely understood. I think there was only one moment in that movie where Jim was frustrated with me that I was not getting what he had written. And it was when she's posing in front of the mirror.
Yes.
And
before she goes in the room, right?
Before she goes in the room with him. The deconstruction, I knew.
Oh, yeah.
But it took me a while to put on the character face that she was going to become in the room. I thought it would happen in the room. He wanted to see the physical transformation, and then he wanted this sort of moment. And I wasn't delivering it. Yeah. And I remember he was frustrated because every time we had to redo it, we had to go put me back into, because, you know, I've wet my hair down, I've ripped my clothes off.
But you have to use the flour for the
flour
water.
thing. So that I remember very, very well. But beyond that, Jim, I'm not going to say left me alone, but he left me alone. Because he hires people who he thinks can do the job, and clearly he'd written it for me. So that was very special. John Cleese wrote A Fish Called Wanda for me. Yeah. Again, for me to do what I do, whatever that is. Again, there was not a lot of finding Wanda Gershwitz in the directing. Charles Crichton really was directing the camera. John had written it. It was very clear what we were doing. And I just had to not laugh when Kevin Kline did what he does. But beyond that, I just, you know what I mean? So, and these movies were
pivotal moments for you. Yeah.
And, Blue Steel was a movie that was very interesting for me. It was a challenge movie. It was incredibly, the Amir Mokri, who's the cinematographer, shot it in a way that I had never been in a movie before. Very tight lenses. Very interesting film. And clearly, again, Catherine knew exactly what she wanted. And again, almost left me alone. And I say left me alone as if not to say that I was just omnipotent and doing whatever the fuck I wanted. I was adhering to what she had written, but she hired me to be it. And clearly I knew what to do. That movie was important to me in that way. And then Freaky Friday was a movie that was not, somebody else was doing, and she had pulled out of the movie, and there was a train that was moving. It was really a moving train. They were ready to shoot, and they were ready to go. And I was on a book tour, and I got the call on a Thursday, and I read it on Friday. I came back. I met Mark on Saturday, and I had my hair dyed red Sunday, and I worked Monday.
Wow.
And I had a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old at home. And that was a movie where I had to completely I'm playing two parts almost simultaneously. And I remember I just said, okay, well, I have no time to even think about this, so just don't think about it. And I've said this before, but there was 2 days in. I mean, very little rehearsal. We just sort of like run a couple lines. And I remember we had 2 days in, and we had shot one day at the high school where she pulls up to school, and there's the cute boy, and there's that very funny scene. And then we shot the scene at where she's on the talk show, where she's now the mother, she is the mother, but she's the 15-year-old inside the mother, who's now supposed to go on a talk show and be, erudite and fabulous, having written a book. And I asked the grips to put silicone and powder down on the floor so that the stage hand could literally push me so that my feet would slide.
Oh, wow.
So that I could lock up and then like be pushed out.
Yeah.
And I remember we did this scene, and I remember it made myself laugh out loud. Like when they ask her a question and she's just sort of like totally stunned. And the next day, Mark Waters came to me and he said, so the editor said to me that he thinks you're too big and that we need to, bring it down. And I remember looking at him and I said, Mark, look, here's the deal. I am doing what my instinctual self would do in these scenes. And I'm making myself laugh doing it. Like, I think it's funny. And honestly, if you don't, then you should fire me and get somebody else and I'll happily go home. But I can't be worrying about it. I can't even hear this from you. because then I'm going to be in my head.
Yeah.
And if I'm in my head and I'm not in my body, which has been possessed by, like if I can't just do what I'm going to do here, that's something you have to work out. You're the director. So you can say, Jamie, bring it down a little or whatever. Whatever it is, I can modulate. But I'm just giving you what I think is the way to go here. And if it's not the way to go here, if it's not funny to you, I understand. I'm a replacement part. If I'm not your replacement part that you want. And I tell you, he said, no, I do. I just, and obviously there was a lot of chatter, which I don't want to know anything about.
Because it just takes you out of it. Yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah.
I just can't know it. And of course, it turned out to be
Hilarious.
hilarious
Yeah.
and one of the great opportunities, and it may be my favorite thing I've ever done because
Wow.
I had no time to think about anything, and it just became real for me. And when I was 15, I was 15. And when I was 45, I was 45. So those kind of experiences, that was very special for me.
And as BN, what does this one do for you?
Well, and then there's Halloween 2018, which was unexpected, the last thing I thought I'd be doing. I was very happy to be doing what I was doing and living my life when David Gordon Green called through my friend Jake Gyllenhaal, who had just worked with him. And
Your godson. Yeah.
well, my godson.
Yeah, I've read that story somewhere. I wasn't sure. But
Well, no, it's true, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like it's written on paper or
Sure.
anything. I didn't have to like prick my finger with blood and then like touch his parents and be like, okay, I'm his godmother or whatever. I knew David a little bit. I know he had just directed Stronger. I knew who he was, but again, I had seen George Washington, and he had just written such an amazing take on this sort of what happens to somebody 40 years later.
Yeah.
And he really honored the emotional aspects of it, and it turned into this insane movie that was just so crazy great.
Yeah.
And so unexpected out of the blue was that. And then on the heels of, in the middle of the promotion, actually the movie was just about to come out. I'd just gone to Europe to do the sort of world tour for Halloween when I was sent Knives Out. And all I had heard was Daniel Craig. And then there were a list of people who were what they say attached, which usually means they've said they like it, but if the financing comes, like it's usually with a lot of caveats attached. And instead of attached, it said confirmed. And the person, I think the first person I saw who was confirmed was Michael Shannon. Now for me, honestly,
one of the best.
It could have just been Michael Shannon and not even Daniel. If it had been this script and Michael Shannon, I would have said yes.
Wow.
Because he's Michael Shannon.
Yeah, take
And I don't
shelter,
get to be in a movie with Michael Shannon in something with quality and depth and interesting and humor and, mystery and all the rest of it. And it was before it was Michael Shannon, it was Daniel. And so this was just this sort of like, are you kidding?
Yeah. It's an amazing script.
Like an amazing script and great actors all of whom I like. Toni Collette. I mean, forget it.
Yeah.
And, I went to Boston for 2 months. Had an amazing time.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I hope if we talk again, I think this will be
course we're gonna
definitely
talk again.
meaning I think this will be
Are
one
we
of
done? Is that it?
They did
Oh
wrap
my
me.
God.
Unfortunately, I also wrote like 17 questions, but the crew, and I don't want to like everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time at all
course.
to
My
do this. And
pleasure.
thank you to everybody in this room for staying later to do
Thank
that.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, so here,
Oh, is this the photo?
this was the photo. This was,
Oh my! So that's the slate from the end.
that
of the
is the original slate from the movie Halloween.
That is unreal.
That
so
I
where
have
is
at
it
my
right
house.
now? Your
It's
house?
in my house.
That's so cool.
Of course.
Kev, when you asked Daniel Craig if he wanted to be on, did he say, Dr. No?
No, he said he had no time. That's no joke there. Sorry, that doesn't work. Really.
That's Jake's
That
joke.
doesn't work. Yeah. Was that Jake's joke? No time to die?
That was Jake's
Oh,
joke.
I didn't even hear Jake's joke. I've made the no time to die joke before. I just forgot about
That's
that.
fair, yeah.
I actually did not hear.
All right,
I did not
3.
hear Jake's joke. Actually, to be honest. Why is that happening? Every
2.
time Jake drops a pun, like I don't hear
It's
it.
bad timing. It's
Yeah.
bad timing on his part.
Okay.
I'm
all right.
in Mexico.
Right. Keep all that, Gabe. Please keep all that and use it in the show. Obviously, we have to thank Lionsgate for setting up that amazing interview with Jamie Lee Curtis, and also Jamie Lee Curtis, as Kevin said, for coming onto the show. Go see Knives Out. It's literally, to me, it's not like an awards contender. It might get like a screenplay nomination. Kevin and I were talking about that the other night, about how it could potentially contend for that. But it's not an awards movie. It's just one of those movies where you go to the theater, you have a really great time, you see this amazing cast, dive into a terrific screenplay, and Ryan going back to his roots of like Brick and Looper and Brothers Bloom and getting back to that type. But he has some of the best dialogue, and that cast seemed to be having a ton of fun diving into that. So, all right, moving on to talking points, news of the week, and this is a headline that Gabe put in for us because, in his opinion, this is the most ReelBlend headline that CinemaBlend has ever posted. This is an upcoming movie, and the headline says, Nicolas Cage to play Nicolas Cage in a movie where Nicolas Cage is desperate to work with Quentin Tarantino. Like, that is going to be a real movie. Nick Cage is going to play Nick Cage, who is playing Nick Cage, and he wants to work with Quentin Tarantino. So I did a quick read of what this is. Now, I think I have the understanding of this is. It's going to be Nick Cage playing a 90s version of Nick Cage, who is coming off of like a string of really bad film choices and wants to get into a Quentin Tarantino movie to resurrect his career. Maybe like a John Travolta-esque way, like my career's kind of in limbo. I need a resurrection. Quentin did this for John Travolta. Now he's going to do it for Nick Cage. But it's going to be Nick Cage playing this version of Nick Cage, trying to get into a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Would it be a major?
I'm on board.
Would it be a major missed opportunity if he doesn't do a face-off bit where he faces off himself, like he changes his face with himself and becomes Nick Cage?
That would make a lot of sense.
That needs to happen.
Yes.
Like I want
Yes.
current Nick Cage and 90s Nick Cage on a table switching faces. That needs to happen. Someone call John Woo right now.
Hold on.
I gotta say
Okay.
though, this is the most excited I've been about a Nick Cage movie in a long time.
So it's called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
That's the real title?
Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. That
is this
apparently is the
real? Is
working
this
title
real?
of this right now.
That's what I tell myself every day when I look in the mirror.
And it says, apparently the actor will talk to an egotistical 90s version of himself who tears him down for recent dumb choices. He might like have like a Nick Cage personality that's talking to him as he's doing this.
So
and it says,
He's basically rebooting adaptation.
yeah, kind of. It sounds a little bit like that. And it says, since the fictional Nick Cage becomes buried in debt, he resorts to make an appearance at the birthday party of a Mexican billionaire who is a massive fan of Nick Cage. After the pair bond, the CIA pulls Nick Cage aside to inform him that the billionaire is really the kingpin of a drug cartel and has kidnapped the daughter of a Mexican presidential nominee as well. The Con Air actor is then recruited by the U.S. government to take the cartel down. I mean, what more do you guys want to
Someone
hear?
was high when they came up with the idea for this movie.
That's
Like I just picture like a bunch of guys in a room going like, guys, what if like Nicolas Cage went to a birthday party for a drug kingpin? Like I just picture that's where this story came from, and I'm here for it.
I miss
love that
90s
it
Nick
says-
Cage. I miss Face Off, Con Air, The Rock. That was truly like his golden age. It really was. I mean, that was the peak Nick Cage right there.
Well, so it sounds like we're getting this movie. He's reportedly getting a massive paycheck to star in it, naturally. But it sounds like it's going to be a hilarious love letter to the lore of Nick Cage that will reference movies such as Leaving Las Vegas, Face Off, and Gone in 60 Seconds. We will obviously report on this Nick Cage playing Nick Cage. It's got to have a Tarantino cameo in it too, right? Like Tarantino has to sort of show up. I think that would be amazing if he did that. My joke before the episode was, what if Tarantino directs this movie and it becomes his 10th film? Like, this is the 10th film that Tarantino puts out.
That'd be
it just becomes a
amazing.
huge meta commentary about, like, Tarantino's films, the 90s, Nick Cage, the two of them bringing down drug cartels. Come on. Everybody wants to see this happen.
I kind of really do. I get that we're like also kind of making fun of it, but I am
Right.
so here for it.
All right. I was here for this next one, but we're kind of in limbo about what is happening here. So this morning, we wake up to news that Warner Brothers is moving forward with a sequel to Todd Phillips' film, The Joker, or just Joker, sorry. And that, in more shocking news, Joaquin Phoenix is going to be on board to participate. And I'm not shocked from this perspective. Any movie that makes $1 billion is going to get consideration for another. Like every studio is going to circle back around to the talent responsible for that movie and say, "Hey, what else can we do?" Like people responded to this. It's clearly not a movie set up to launch franchises. Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix said to us on this show they have no intention of doing a sequel, but $1 billion changes a lot of minds. And before we even got a chance to record, that story was refuted, but not like wholeheartedly refuted, more just, hey, nothing's official yet. And that story about Todd Phillips petitioning Warner Brothers to get all of these origin stories for other DC villains is erroneous. But I didn't get your guys' reactions to the news that they potentially might keep going forward with Joker. I think, truthfully, I think it's a great idea. Do you guys disagree?
I'm a little surprised that Phoenix would want to do another one. He's someone that I picture. I mean, you could back up 10 Brinks trucks, and it doesn't feel like it would really matter to him. So it's sort of, if it ends up happening and Phoenix comes back, it's his involvement that would excite me, because I feel like it must really be a good idea, and he must really think that there's something for him to do. That being said, and I kind of asked this question earlier today, but I know everybody was sort of busy in the text thread. If a sequel happens, does that confirm that everything in the first movie happened?
No.
Because I know we've had this debate about what happened and what didn't.
I don't think so.
It's going to have to address what happened or what didn't happen, right?
Right. So I still don't think Murray gets killed at the end of Joker. Spoiler alert. I don't think that scene ever even happens. I don't think anything happens after Arkham Asylum. In the sense of, I think it's all in his head.
Then there is no Batman.
What do you mean there's no Batman? Just because he doesn't go to the house?
If he doesn't go on the show and say that line and kill Batman, if he doesn't go on the line and kill Murray, then that dude doesn't take that line that he just heard on TV and say it before he kills Thomas Wayne.
But why does that line have to be said for Batman to become Batman? Like just because Todd Phillips shows us a scene where Batman's parents get killed.
You think it's just a coincidence that he made up this thing in his mind?
See, and
this thing he made up in his...
You're caught on the line. Like, you're caught on the idea that, like, the guy said the line in the story of Batman and killed Batman's parents. I'm saying that Batman's parents were still killed in some way or form, but it might not have been... I don't think it had to be tied to what Joker did on Murray's show.
But if this whole thing's in his head, why would it cut to this scene that has absolutely nothing to do with him?
Well, right. Yeah, you wouldn't see that in his point of view if it was something that was happening in his head. Like, he wouldn't know about...
Yes, he wouldn't like imagine this whole thing, but then also imagine this one instance about...
The Joker's an unreliable narrator. The Joker's the narrator of that movie. He can tell us whatever he wants.
Well, I want to throw out one potential thing, though, that could derail whether this is even important. Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix could do another Joker movie that doesn't have to be like set in the days or year immediately after what just happened. Like, they just did a standalone Joker movie. They could go 15 years ahead and do Joker as a massive Gotham kingpin, and do its own little movie that's not connected to anything. I think the beauty of these concept films is not trying to keep up a narrative for multiple films. And this...
I liked Gabe's idea. Gabe tweeted to us earlier today, the Joker in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Why not? Right, exactly.
I'm so down for that.
And I think if you present that to Joaquin, it's more interesting than we're just building a superhero franchise. Like, okay, so he ripped off. He was inspired by
Sure.
Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. So why not do, some other classic films and drop the Joker into them? I don't think that I don't think they have to approach this the way that we
What other
view
Scorsese movies do we want him
sequel.
to?
Gangs of New York.
Last Temptation of Christ.
You want to see Joker and Wolf of Wall Street? Come on. And Margot as Harley.
I personally don't like this news, and here's why. This comes down to business versus story, in my opinion.
Sure.
And I understand Hollywood's a business. I totally get that. But they were very adamant that this was a one-off, that this was not connected to Robert Pattinson's Batman whatsoever, that there was not going to be a sequel. And I think when money is made like that, I don't know. It worries me because let's say they do go through with the Joker sequel, right? Was it made for the right reasons? Joker 1 was made for very specific reasons because Todd Phillips wanted to tell this story, right? And I think, films like Frozen 2, for example, I look at that movie as very much a business decision, which I understand, but did we need more story? And because the movie made $1 billion, I think that needs to be taken into account. How much of this decision is genuinely based around Todd Phillips wanting to explore more Joker, or is it literally the studio going, please make another one? And then and I don't want it to taint the first movie at all. And I think to Jake's point, and I'll take Jake's side, because I know Jake and I have very different opinions on what happens in Joker. And I don't think the whole thing's a dream. For people who don't remember, I just said it's after the Arkham Asylum moment when he goes to get the papers from Brian Tyree Henry. I don't think he leaves from that point. But that being said, I don't want to know if it's right or wrong. I actually don't want to know the answer to that question. And I think, to Jake's point, they will have to address that unless they go down the route that Gabe was talking about and Jake was talking about with the Cuckoo's Nest element, just dropping his character into different versions of the story. Remember, he could go back. We could go back to Joker's childhood. Maybe we go back to his mom in the Wayne mansion. And then and
there's plenty of things you could do.
That to me is interesting. I would actually think growing up, but then Joaquin isn't really the star, right?
See, I'm less interested in that.
Yeah, I just don't need another sequel. I get the business we're in, but I don't think it's. Yeah. I think it's a business decision, not a story decision, and that bothers me.
Well, I want to point out that nothing has been confirmed on this, obviously, but it just feels like once a movie crosses $1 billion. We're absolutely going to start hearing something else about these two collaborating, especially, God forbid, if Joaquin goes on and wins an Oscar for it. And isn't this going to be fun to have him have to answer sequel questions on the Best Actor campaign trail? He's going to love that. Joaquin, baby, come on back on this show. We won't ask you that question. Maybe we'll ask you that question.
Yeah, I'm saying, yes, we will.
Probably have to ask you that question. All right, let's explain really quickly why Kevin and I are in Cabo San Lucas. Some people might have seen it on social media, and talk briefly about some of the stuff that we got to do today. So we saw the movie, we saw Jumanji, The Next Level, which explains the joke at the beginning of the podcast, on Tuesday night. We're recording this on Wednesday. It's Wednesday, correct? And we can... let's hold off on reacting to the movie. We were able to sort of tweet reactions to it, but we're not able to give a review. But it's so far off. It's coming out in December. We'll talk plenty more about Jumanji before we get there. But one of the things that they did for us today were these activities that are tied to events in the movie. And they had these long suspension bridges over this massive canyon in Mexico City that we were able to drive ATVs over. Kevin, did you get to drive yours?
I drove mine. Yeah, I drove it over that massive bridge.
Good.
Yeah.
It was insane. It's literally right out of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like, it reminded me, so it's a little more sturdy than that one, obviously.
That's a good way to put it. That's what it felt like. You're right. Yeah, that is a good way to put it. Felt like. Yeah.
Then they gave us the option of either doing zip line or bungee jump. And the debate the entire time heading to the mountain where we were going was who's going to do bungee jump. And there's just no way that I was going to do it. Like, just no way possible that I would be able to. And I even got text messages from people who were saying, like, dude, it's the safest possible scenario. Like, Sony doesn't want to kill off a journalist on a press junket. Like, they're going to clearly make sure that it's as safe as physically possible. But I'm old and in a lot of pain all the time. So I was not going to bungee jump.
Yeah, but it could have stretched you out. It could have, like, loosened all the joints.
Right. Sure. Or I could really mess myself up even more.
Either way, I just want to see what happens.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I did zip line instead, and it was pretty remarkable because it's literally just you're in a harness and you use this metallic hook to put over the zip line, and then you go as fast as physically possible.
Which one
from
did you
point
do,
of the
Sean?
mountain
There
to
was
the other.
multiple zip lines. Did you go over the whole thing? Like,
Yeah, well, the last one that we did was the one that went underneath the two bridges.
Oh, that's cool.
And you got up to 47 miles an hour.
What? You're going 47?
This is the thing. You go 47 miles an hour on this tiny zip line, and dude, it was scary. So I start to do it, and I literally said to the guy, I was like, no, I can't do this. I have a fear of heights anyway. I'm not good with heights. And then I came back up, and he's kind of like laughing, and he's kind of like, it's okay, it's all right, that's all right. We'll find another person. And then I said, you know what? Let's go. I'm here. I did it. Let's go. And I did it. I went backwards, did the zip line backwards. And it's scary as hell. And I did not make it all the way to the platform. And sure enough, you did. So I got to the end, and then I started to sort of backtrack, which you do. And you're wearing these thick gloves, and they teach you to grab the zip line, and I did. And then I did a Mission Impossible thingamabob where I pulled myself up to the top. And then the last zip line was that 47 mile per hour one that went underneath the bridges. And it was
that's crazy,
unbelievable. And all we kept
Please tell
joking.
me you were humming the theme to yourself. Please tell me you were like out of air, out of breath, going like, da,
Of course I
da,
did.
da, 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 da.
No, the thing is, it's not like exertion. You're literally resting in the harness, right? Like it's doing all the work for you. Most of the people who do it are like pulling themselves up really hard on the thing, and you're not even supposed to do that. You're supposed to just sort of lay back there and catch yourself. But the thing that we kept joking was, we're on this mountaintop in Mexico, ziplining with the ocean in the background, and we're like, you know what? Somebody made a Jumanji movie, and now we get to be in Cabo San Lucas doing zip lines and doing what Kevin did. Kevin opted for the other part of the trip, which
Dude,
was
I
not
just
zip
watched
lines.
your videos on your Instagram without saying what you did, and my stomach churned. Just like watch it, I had to like put my phone down. I was like, "Oh God,
Yeah.
I can't."
Kevin, walk us through bungee jumping in Mexico.
Well, this was insane. So you did the ATV across the Jeff Bridges, right? Like the big.
I did,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
I
did.
But
it was awesome.
Yeah, the bungee jumping was. This was a very weird thing for me because I've always wanted to skydive and I've always wanted to bungee jump. Those were like two of the things I've always wanted to do in my life, and two major things I've wanted to do. So bungee jumping specifically, though, I've always found to be an interesting thing because that initial drop and then that when you like hit the bottom, I guess, and fly back up, that always kind of freaked me out. I wondered how that was going to feel when you I guess reflected back up towards the gondola. So anyways, so we're in the gondola. And you're in this moment where you have to make a decision because this guy is going to open up these two gigantic doors, and then on the count of three, you're going to jump out on your own. And there's
you could have bailed out. Did anybody bail out?
There was a reporter who I heard on the next group that got to the jumping moment, and on the count of three, he bailed back. And then I think one guy just didn't go through with that motion whatsoever. I don't know who they were. I just heard people talking about that. So anyway,
that's awesome.
So anyway, so you're on the gondola and you're all tied up, and they tell you that when you actually jump, you don't jump down, don't put your head down. Jump towards the bridge like Superman. Like put your arms out and literally leap out of the gondola. Now, meanwhile, I'm holding on to a GoPro that's attached to my arm that I'm trying not to look at or imagine is there. And when they tell you to go, you literally go on 3. And if you don't go on 3, they're going to reset your clock. And so the scariest moment, there's two scary moments. The scariest moment for me was once you get up to that ledge, you're the one who has to push yourself to make that jump. There's nobody is pushing you. Nobody's going with you. You are just diving out of a gondola with 300 feet below you attached to a bungee jumping cord. And that to me was one of the most frightening things ever because you just have to go and you jump. And then once you're out there, you just free fall. The scariest thing was when you really hit like that moment where the cord catches you and you fly back up, and then you're literally hanging, dangling upside down as like the blood's rushing to your head. And at that point, I was completely delirious. Like I was seeing double because at that point
How is that
No, it was amazing. It was amazing.
fun.
But there is.
Did it hurt?
All the while, Sean's backward ass was like ziplining, going like out of breath, pulling himself across the mountains of Cabo San Lucas.
It didn't.
Like Ethan Hunt?
It didn't hurt. It was just very strange.
All right, well, we're going to have our interviews with the cast on our various channels, and we'll talk plenty more about Jumanji as we get to it. But that's why Kevin and I are in Cabo San Lucas, and right after this, we're running to a press conference with the cast, and so keep following along on our socials, or go back and watch on our socials and check out some of the videos. Kevin, I'm sure, is going to post that amazing video of him holding the GoPro. It was pretty remarkable. Okay, I want to get to this week in movies, and I'm fairly convinced at this point now that Gabe makes up titles and includes them, because the first 3 movies that are on this list I've never heard of before in my life, and I swear to God these movies do not exist. And he's doing this completely to just get us to say that we have not seen a movie. Because have either of you seen Citizen K?
No, did they just drop off the last 3 letters of the title? I don't understand. Citizen Kane?
Kane?
That's what it sounds like.
How about When Lambs Become Lions? I mean, not even seen it. Have you guys even heard of the movie When Lambs Become Lions?
Is this like a is this a sequel to the Nicole Kidman movie Lion and Silence of the Lambs? Like, have they like combined the stories?
How about Shooting the Mafia?
No.
Anything.
These are real.
Nothing.
These are real.
Tumbleweeds.
This is a joke.
These are not.
He's
these
kidding.
Are not
He's
real movies.
kidding.
This is a bit.
Yeah.
Gabe, you're doing a bit.
It's a bit.
It's got to be doing a bit.
He's doing a bit
All
because
right.
every week we don't know the movies what we're talking about. There's no way those are real.
I do know Mark Ruffalo is in this movie Dark Waters. Has anyone seen Dark Waters?
I have not. He was just.
You're making it up.
He was in DC recently.
No, Dark Waters is a real movie.
That's a real movie.
I don't know what that movie is about, though. I have no idea. It's about fracking? Why do I think it's like some sort of environmental
It's
movie?
about water.
I think it is.
Water that has poisonous elements
It's
in
dark,
it. Yeah.
I think. I think it's dark. Yeah.
All right, 21 Bridges. It's Dark Water. Has anyone seen 21 Bridges? Kevin, you saw 21
I saw 21
right?
Bridges. I still don't know why it's called 21 Bridges, but yes.
There are 21 bridges going into and out of Manhattan, Kevin, and he shut down every single one of them.
Right.
There's only one Avenger we can trust.
I mean,
Oh, God, that was the tagline?
no, it's not.
Lord,
That's not the tagline. That would be amazing.
It is. Look at the poster. It's on the poster.
It
I think
doesn't.
that was the tagline.
It
No,
doesn't
I
say
did
there's
see that
one
on the poster.
Avenger we can trust.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
You're joking.
Look at the. I'll keep talking. I'll pull it up.
No,
I
it
swear to God.
does
I
not
did
say
see
that.
Kevin, do you recommend it?
It's fine. I mean, it's very old school, like 90s, 80s type cop dramas in regards to. I feel like I've seen the movie before, and the 21 Bridges aspect of it I found to be frustrating because it's called that, but that becomes such a minute detail in the movie. They don't even really kind of like they shut the bridges down, but to me that wasn't even really what the movie was about. And it reminded me a lot of 16 Blocks a little bit as well, with Bruce Willis and Mos Def, and just that idea of kind of like that element. But Chadwick is good. The script is just not great, unfortunately.
Okay.
I thought that the highlight of the film for me, and I told this to Chadwick Boseman, and I think this is a fascinating thing. Chadwick Boseman has been in 2 films recently where the villain of the movie has done horrible things, yet there's a sympathetic element to the way Chadwick's character, who's the protagonist, is acting in a scene with the villainous character. So if you look at something like Killmonger in Black Panther, while the character had killed over 100 people, he had scars to prove it, you still care for Killmonger at the end of the movie when Killmonger, quote unquote, dies, if you want to believe he's dead.
Sure.
And there's something very similar to me about the relationship that he has with Stevan James in this film. And Stevan James's character, along with Taylor Kitsch, they are involved in a very brutal scenario where a lot of police officers are killed. I can't believe it actually says that on the poster. That's unreal to me.
It says in a city on lockdown, he's the only Avenger they can count on.
And I guess for people who don't know, the Russo brothers did produce the movie, but that tagline's interesting to me. But the movie itself, as I mentioned, it's this Stevan James character who was involved in this murder sequence, but it's the question of how he got there, why he was there, and how involved he was. And I think that the movie really does a good job of building a relationship with Chadwick's character, trying to figure out why Stevan James was even involved in this in the first place. And that kind of builds an emotional arc there. That, to me, was what worked. Other than that, I don't recommend it in a theater, but if you watched it like at home after it came out on demand or whatever, I think you would go, that was entertaining. It was fine.
What about Frozen 2? I have not seen it. Meh.
I think I'll let Jake take this for a second. Go ahead, Jake. You've seen it.
I actually read something interesting about it, which is that it is the Empire Strikes Back of the Frozen series.
What?
And they say that in the sense that it's a little bit darker. It's less. It's fine.
But no one would say it's fine about Empire Strikes Back.
I'm not saying it's the Empire. I think it is darker. Here's what's interesting about it. Is it okay? Let's be. It is a movie for kids, right? And there's no like proper structure or villain to it. Like it's more about like growing older and growing apart, and it's more about like internal struggles, which I'm curious as to how that's going to play with children. Like, right. The first film had a very definitive, like, here's who the bad guy is, here's who's the person we need to beat. And this one is all about what's going on the inside, which, like, if you're, a 30-year-old, adult going to see this, you might find that sort of interesting that they took that direction. I always like, my test for success when it comes to sequels and animated films is if you're a child and you have both of these on DVD or on the Disney Plus app, and you have the choice between putting 1 or 2 on, no child's going to choose 2 over 1. I just don't think they're going to.
Interesting.
I just don't think it plays as simply as an animated movie needs to play. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
but the songs.
I love the songs.
The songs don't live up.
I actually think the songs were quite good.
Yeah, the songs are amazing, and I think I don't love Frozen 1. I liked Frozen 1. I thought Frozen 1 had great songs. My problem with the Frozen films, and it happens again in the sequel, is I think the story is secondary to the music, and I think that the music should be a powerful storytelling tool to use to enhance your story. But for me, when they break into song, I like being stepped away from the story because I don't think the stories are that interesting, unfortunately. I think this one even more so. And I've seen the movie twice, and this is not an exaggeration. I could not tell you what the plot of this film is. Because to me, it is so overly convoluted and just unnecessary storytelling wise. But when they break into there are moments in this film that are amazing. Gad's Olaf is incredible. There's a moment where he recaps Frozen 1 in 30 seconds, which I just thought was brilliant. There's an 80s montage, which is very funny, that by Jonathan Groff, which is one of the best scenes in the movie. There are very good scenes in this film, and I think I saw it again the other night, and I saw it with a true Frozen fan, and she liked it more than Frozen 1. And this person's seen Frozen 1 hundreds of times. And my wife and I went to the movie, and this girl named Carmen and her mom went, and Carmen was a big Frozen fan. She loved the film. So I wonder if it's something that maybe I'm just missing. And I found it to be interesting because when I walked out of the film, I still felt the same way I did the first time. I thought it was just fine. And she was blown away by it. So I think who was this movie made for? It was probably made for people who were obsessed with Frozen 1. And I was not, right. I didn't love Frozen 1. But I want to highlight 3 of the songs in this one. Into the Unknown is amazing. Show Yourself is amazing. And then The Next Right Thing, which is Kristen Bell, which I didn't realize she didn't have a solo in Frozen 1. She gets her first solo in this one. And her voice is incredible. Here's the thing.
Did she not sing Do You Want to Build a Snowman? She sings Do You Want to Build a Snowman.
Who was that with, though? Wasn't that with somebody else was in that song? Double check it. But this is her first official solo. But I'll double check that. But Build a Snowman, I think
I've seen Frozen once in my life, and I've never saw it again. It's the beauty of having boys.
Yeah.
I don't have to watch Frozen over and over again.
I'll tell this to our audience. If you're a fan of Frozen 1, if your kids liked it, they're gonna love Frozen 2. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I don't.
But do you think that? Kids. I think your kids are gonna like it. But in a year, when they're both available, don't you think the kids are just going to keep... Like, if you're a parent that's looking forward to Frozen 2 so your kid will stop watching Frozen 1, I don't think you're going to get that. Because I think they're going to go right back to Frozen 1.
There's definitely songs in this one that are going to be Let It Go level. I think Into the Unknown is going to be a big track.
Oh, dude, Let It Go is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, man.
Well, Let It Go is... Yeah.
It's also... Yeah. It's interesting, too, that Disney didn't do sequels for the longest time. And I didn't think the Wreck-It Ralph sequel was better than the first movie. You guys are saying this about Frozen 2 now. Maybe they should go back to that tradition. Well, because it's something we talked about earlier in the episode. Don't go back to it unless you have a story to tell.
Right, but
if
you're
don't
Frozen
say, oh, this was successful.
Yeah, was Frozen 2 made because Frozen 1 made $1 billion, or was it made because they really had another story to tell? That's
Also toys. Don't forget toys.
The first one. Oh, that's so many.
So many toys.
There's a funny bit in the new Jumanji that won't make sense to anybody, so I won't mention.
Yeah, I was like, where are you going with this? Like,
yeah, never.
Cool
mind.
story, bro.
There's a really funny bit that I'll tell you guys after the show is over. Okay, beautiful day in the neighborhood. I'm gonna go first because I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority on this one. This movie is just okay. And it should. Yeah, I know. Jake is horrified.
So am I. I'm starting to think you hate Tom Hanks. You hate Forrest Gump.
who are you?
No, it's nothing to do with. I do hate Forrest Gump. It's a terrible movie. This movie is not. And Kevin and I have been having this conversation a lot about what your expectations are for a movie versus what the movie ends up being. And I probably have to go back and revisit this because. It's not the movie that they were telling me it was going to be. It's not come see Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, because it's so much more focused on Matthew Rhys's character. It's the story of this journalist who gets assigned the profile of Fred Rogers. He doesn't want to do it. He's more of a hard-hitting journalist. And if it were primarily focused on how these guys interacted, maybe I'd be more into it. But it gets into another story which didn't wrap me up, which is the guy's struggles with his father, played by Chris Cooper, who is very good in the film. I just wasn't as invested in their storyline. And I don't know, I had issues with it. I didn't get past, like, to me, Tom Hanks it's always Tom Hanks. It's not Fred Rogers. I think coming off of the documentary, it's hard to do a narrative feature when the documentary was so superior. I think some of it's really cute, where it goes back into the world of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like seeing the recreations and seeing how he put the show together was fairly interesting to me, but it just didn't connect. And it was really funny to come out of that because I was sitting right near Jake in the Toronto world premiere that we saw it in, and I could tell he was just so moved by it. And I just felt like such a jerk. I'd just be like, I didn't.
I mean, I ugly cried, dude. I ugly cried hard.
You were all in. So have you seen it since? Is that the only time you've seen it? Did you get a chance to see it a second time?
Yeah, that's the only time I've seen it. But it's it's really held up for me. It's I didn't really know what it was going to be going in. I don't think I realized just how, I don't want to say small of a part Hanks had, but enough to justify, I think, him getting the supporting nomination over lead. It's a movie about how it's okay to be broken and that there's nothing wrong with that. And, we live in a world where, especially with social media and filters and photo changing apps, where you got to sort of adjust who you are for the world and pretend that you're not, essentially pretend that you're okay. And this is a movie about how, like, not only is it okay to be broken, it's also okay to admit that you're broken, and that's what makes you a normal person. That's what makes you human. And telling that story through this essentially broken journalist, and then having Mr. Rogers, perhaps the only person on the planet who has a better reputation than Tom Hanks, sort of convey that, what I think is a very important message in 2019. It hit me in all the right places, man. It hit me in the feels. And I thought Tom Hanks was absolutely incredible. It's actually probably one of my favorite Tom Hanks performances. This is a top 5 movie of the year for me. I thought Matthew Rhys was phenomenal, and he carries the weight of the movie on his shoulders. And I was also, I've said this on the show a lot. I'm a sucker for a father-son story, and I thought with as good as Matthew Rhys and Chris Cooper were. The fact that, it's like you had a movie that had like all of the boxes of like, what can we do to affect Jake? And it's like, talk about broken people, talk about father sons, use Tom Hanks to tell these things. It's like they had that list, and then they're like, okay, make this movie, and it worked. And sure, like
Jake Hamilton bingo card.
Maybe and they nailed it, man. They got the bingo. So man, it worked.
That's
for me.
funny.
Yeah,
Kevin, just as much for you?
I love the movie. It's funny because I love the movie as much as Jake did, but for completely different reasons. I like that the film is not. See, to me, Tom Hanks and this is meant to sound in a good way. I think his character's an afterthought in the film. And I think the movie is more about Matthew Rhys's storyline, Chris Cooper's storyline. It's basically an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in 2 hours. And when you watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, those episodes really aren't about him. They're about whatever topic he's discussing on the show that day, right? So to me, it was
heavy topics too. Heavy topics for kids.
Right, but Tom Hanks, to me, his Mr. Rogers is a character that is supposed to make us feel comfortable and get us into a setting of watching an episode of the show. And then the real story takes over, which is Matthew Rhys and Chris Cooper's relationship. And that, to me, was what struck me really, really hard about this film. I think that the emotional element, Matthew Rhys's performance is one of the best performances I've seen this year. And I know the acting race is way too heavy to have his name included. But him and Chris Cooper, there's just something special about watching those two perform together. And the beauty of what Tom Hanks does with Mr. Rogers is he's not in the film a ton, but even when he's not there, it's Mr. Rogers' presence that you feel throughout the film. You feel that good-natured, real element of who Mr. Rogers was, but also the broken nature that Jake talks about. We peek into a little bit about the broken elements of Mr. Rogers' life and his life with his children. And to me, that's what made the film so special, is they didn't go into a ton of exposition. We learned about Mr. Rogers' faults and imperfections through the imperfections of Matthew Rhys's character. And I always find that to be a more interesting way to tell a story, is if we're learning about a character while talking to another character. We're not explicitly coming out and going, I'm broken too, here's what's going on. It comes up in very natural conversation. So I found the film to be an absolute delightful film, but also a very emotional film. People going into it's not a Mr. Rogers movie. If you're expecting a Mr. Rogers movie, you're not going to be getting that. It is, if you just imagine a 2-hour version of his show, the movie opens like the show opens, and it's very well done and very well executed. So I loved it. I was very, very happy with it. But to me, what stuck with me was Matthew Rhys and Chris Cooper. They blew my mind.
I didn't love the frame story of putting it in an episode. Sometimes I thought it was weird.
Loved it.
I think you're weird.
Yeah, sometimes I thought it was weird. Like when they go to New York and it shows like a tiny little plane flying into
I like that.
fake New
It was
York.
cool.
I don't know. It's kind of.
But you like Endgame?
Oh, Endgame's amazing. What? How is that connected?
I don't know. I was just trying to like needle you a little bit.
It's just not even funny. All right, so those two guys highly recommend Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
So good.
I would tell you to go watch the documentary.
Kevin, does it have a shot at your top 10?
I don't know. My top 10 has been obliterated the past couple weeks.
I feel like I've got like 20 movies on my top 10.
I was confident Dr. Sleep was gonna make it, Neighborhood was gonna make it, Ford vs Ferrari, my top 10 is destroyed right now. I do have a new number 1 and number 2 I mentioned last week, but right now my top, I don't even know where. It's almost overwhelming, and I want everyone listening to this episode right now to go back. And I've said this before, and find the episode we recorded in London where we were doing our top 5 of the year at the moment. And listen to the way we have that conversation prior to all these films we've seen since then. It was harder. It was harder then than it is now, but now it's getting to a point where it's actually as hard as it was then to pick my top 10, but because there's too many.
And we still have big, like I'm seeing, I know you guys have seen it already, I'm seeing Uncut Gems tonight. I'm seeing 1917 and Bombshell on Monday. I just
got my Bombshell invite.
Oh, I just got my screener for the Two Popes.
Amazing.
Like we still got Star Wars. Like if I had to make my top 10 list right now, it would be difficult. And we still have 5 or 6 potential contenders left to see. Not just like movies, I need to see before the end of the year. Potential contenders to get on, like 1917 for me is a contender. Like a Roger Deakins shot Sam Mendes war movie. Absolutely, that's a contender for me.
Skywalker.
I hope Star Wars is a contender for me.
What if Skywalker blows us all away? I mean, and you'll hear this in the Rian Johnson interview next week, but JJ came out recently in a great interview where he said that essentially he admired the risks that Rian took on 8, which allowed him to be more risky on 9, because he kind of essentially admits in so many words that 7 was a safe way to remake 4 or reboot, episode 4. And it was, to me, I'm now that much more curious. because I still cannot comprehend the idea that before 7, there was no plan from what we know of laid out of where 7 was going to go, 8 was going to go, and 9 was going to go. And Ryan in the podcast says he has absolutely no clue where 9's going. And I find that to be mind-blowing. That 8...
I don't believe him.
8 is such
You don't?
8 is so... It changes everything that happened in 7. How is 9...
He has to know where some of it's
work?
going.
How is 9... So, I mean,
Nah.
but based on that, I know we're wrapping up, we'll go on to our blend game, but I do want to say that based on that quote from JJ, I am now way more excited about 9. And like, now I'm wondering,
Yeah.
I want to revisit 8. I've only seen 8 once because I was so disappointed by a lot of it. I know. Gabe's saying I know. But I mean, I only saw it once because it was a disappointment for me. But
I don't like it either, dude.
I will say this, and then we'll move on. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. And that happened to me recently with my number 1 of the year. I loved the film, but I went in to that movie wanting the movie that I wanted that filmmaker to make. And when I saw it
Is it Hollywood?
I'll say it. It's Hollywood now. But when I
Hot
saw...
damn!
When I saw Hollywood 3rd and 4th time, that's when I finally let my mind go and said, what is the movie Quentin wanted to make? So the question now is, if I go back to Jedi, which I will, prior to 9, I'm going to sit back and go, put all my expectations aside. What is the movie Ryan's making? Not the movie Kevin wanted Ryan to make. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering how different Jedi is going to play for me. So I'm going to watch it again.
Good. Let's we should live tweet it.
You know what?
That'd be a lot of fun.
Honestly,
Should we all do it together? We should all do it together.
Yeah.
that'd be fun.
Why not, right?
Because Gabe and Sean...
That's kind of a fun idea.
Gabe and Sean love Jedi. Jake and I do not.
Gabe is saying wrap it up, but he's also
He's like,
giving
a
us
thumbs up, yeah.
So he likes the idea,
But he's like,
but
move
stop
on.
talking
Yeah.
about it. All right, this week's blend game, a fun one, and I think is going to create a lot of debate because what is a musical? What defines what a musical is? I saw a lot of choices from people on social media who played along using the hashtag #MusicalBlend. And I'm going to yell at most of those people and tell them things you chose are not really a musical.
There's a difference between a movie with music or about music and a movie that's a musical. Sing Street is not a musical.
Exactly.
Correct.
Bohemian Rhapsody is not a musical.
Not a musical.
Rocket Man is a musical.
Is a musical.
And
Yes.
yeah, so the exact way to put it, I'm sure Sean will elaborate too, is if the music in the film is being done in a concert type way where people in the audience are legitimately listening to it like a Bohemian Rhapsody, that's not a musical.
Not a
But
musical.
when
Or
they
I'd
break
argue,
in,
if the characters know they're singing, it's not a
right.
musical.
Yeah.
If they break into song randomly, like they do in Rocket Man or even Frozen. See, I bet you there's a gray area we're missing here. Someone's going to say, "Oh, this is kind of wrong." But the way I look at Bohemian Rhapsody is not a musical, and I don't understand how anybody could call
that's
it a
not a
musical.
musical.
But Rocket Man definitely is.
Carrie Ellen Case, who listens to the show on the regular, asked about Almost Famous. Not a musical.
Not a musical.
I'm sorry. It's a
movie
it's
about
a music
music.
driven by music for sure. I asked Gabe this just to see if I get away with it. I would have made an argument. Could I include That Thing You Do? Not a musical. It's not a musical. I can't, in good conscience, do it. And so I'll go first. I've been told I get to go
That
first.
Thing You Do is so good, by the way. It's such a good movie. Oh.
It's the best.
We gotta read Gabe's text here.
That's funny.
Gabe did make a clarification.
Yeah, I just read
The
it.
Sound of Music.
Go ahead, read
The Sound
that.
of Music is, and they know they're singing in The Sound of Music, so that's kind of the musical. Is that an exception?
Yeah, that's an accept. That is totally a musical.
Okay.
Oh, Mary Poppins. Like Mary Poppins, like she's singing with them. I think Mary Poppins is a musical.
Mary Poppins is a musical, but don't they?
Oh my God,
Yeah, I
I'm
know
so
what you're
tired
saying.
of this conversation.
No, this is actually a legitimate
right.
conversation.
I see it, Gabe. I see it. All right, I've been told that I'm supposed to count down from 3, 2, 1, and we're all supposed to give our collective answer.
Does that mean we all collectively have the same answer?
Wait, we all picked the same one?
3, 2, 1.
Dunkirk.
La La Land.
Moonlight. What? What?
The show's not over?
We can't do anything right.
Wait, did we all go with La La Land? For real?
This show is such a failure. Yes, I had to. I
agree. I also
it's my
had to.
favorite.
It is my. You know, and
It's
the thing is,
truly my favorite.
I tried not to.
Yes, I did too.
I had a
Especially as I
different
looked
one.
over. Okay. How about that? we can all celebrate, and if you've listened to this show at all, especially early on, you know that all three of us are huge fans of Damien Chazelle. He is getting at least consideration for Rushmore inclusion. Like when we were talking about like the directors of ReelBlend. Jake, don't make that face.
Four faces on Rushmore. 4.
You always get so hung up on the fact that there are 4. Why can't he be one of the 4? You love First Man. Love it.
Okay,
you love it more than I do.
Scorsese, Spielberg, and Tarantino take up 3.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
And Nolan.
I'm sorry. Which one of those are you going to tell they don't belong on Mount Rushmore?
I agree with Jake. And here's the thing. First Man and La La Land were phenomenal films. It's funny because I would even argue that Ryan Johnson is as good of a filmmaker as Damien Chazelle because Ryan had Looper and Brick.
Stop it!
My point being, though, is that there is no way in any way, shape, or form you would put him on your top 4 if you actually made a Mount Rushmore physically of your favorite directors.
Fine.
There's
We're not doing Rushmore blend right now.
So Kevin explains it and it makes logical sense. Jake does it and he's an asshole.
No one said that. Now we have the E. Jake, children are listening.
No, we had the E because of Ryan Johnson, so it's okay. So joke's on you.
That's next week.
Oh, no.
With Jamie Lee Curtis.
Does she curse? Jamie Lee Curtis curses.
Does she swear?
I think
Kevin,
so.
Does she swear?
I think she cursed in the interview.
All right. Well,
Jamie Lee Curtis for the
damn
win.
you, Jamie Lee Curtis. Damn you. Jamie E. Curtis. I'm gonna call her.
That's good.
Yes, that was actually good.
All right. I think we've all sort of gushed about it. It's hard not to talk about La La Land. I mean, it's contemporary, but it feels old. The music is incredible. It caught me up immediately from the opening number, which is staged incredibly. People like sleep on how amazing the choreography is in that movie.
Yeah.
Just the opening scene alone
is unbelievable. And now it's come down to like, oh yeah, that's right. He shut down an off-ramp, to stage a musical number in Los Angeles traffic. He shut down an off-ramp to stage a musical number. I mean, it's mind-blowing how, and of course the leads are perfect. I think the two of them together are so great. And to me, there's not a bad scene in that movie. Jake, I'm like you in that I didn't want to pick it. It feels like too easy of a pick. So I had a second choice. Did either of you guys have a second choice?
I just went and picked one. I went and picked a second choice.
Mine was Grease. I love Grease.
It's a great one.
I like the fact that Grease has a rock element to it. Like you hear musical and it's like song and dance orchestra, Sound of Music type thing, or Singing in the Rain. And Grease was one of the. I mean, I was pretty young when I saw it too, and I was like, like musicals can be really cool. Like they can have a rock element to it. The people in it can look kind of cool for the time. Had that sort of 50s, 60s element to it. I would have picked Grease if I didn't pick La La Land. That would have been my second choice.
I think I would have gone with Moulin Rouge.
Oh, that's a great one.
It makes you listen to songs that you know differently. It's both something I've never seen before, but also like you're like, oh, I kind of know this music a little bit. It's playing from two different sides of the field, but it works together very well. And that is a movie. That is a director's movie. That is Baz Luhrmann's vision. The leads are incredible. And if it's a movie that. Like a good musical kind of feels like a little bit like a cinematic warm blanket where you could kind of just pull it up at any moment and you're good to go and just kind of kick back and relax and chill for 2 hours. And if I didn't have things to do tonight, I could turn it on right now and watch it.
Yeah, I mean,
Kevin, that's Lauren's favorite movie. Isn't that Lauren's favorite movie?
It's one of her favorite movies ever, and she's seen the Broadway show. One thing about La La Land before I give you my second choice, Jake made a comment earlier about like how Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood kind of checked off a lot of boxes for him of things he likes. La La Land was that for me because it was shot on 35 millimeter film. 2, it had one of the most incredible tracking shots in the beginning, the one that Sean's referring to. 3, it's a movie about movies. There's a love of filmmaking in that film. That movie hit everything for me, and the songs were so brilliant. But it was shot. Linus Sandgren's cinematography is just so masterful, and the cinematography itself sings along with the music, and that's the beauty of that marriage of 30, like that 35 mil. And people, I understand we can have digital and 35 millimeter discussions, and we get into an interesting one with Ryan Johnson next week. But it is there's something old school about what Damien did there. I think Damien Chazelle was probably born in the wrong time period. I feel like he would have been he would have been like a great filmmaker in the 50s and 60s or 40s, where even he's still great now, but that guy is like an old soul, right? I feel like La La Land is coming from a very unique, passionate place about how old movies were made, which is, I could say the same thing about Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, these movies are hand built. They feel old school. They feel legitimately passion. You can feel the passion of the filmmaker racing through that screen. I mean, and truly to me, that's why La La Land worked so well, because it wasn't just the music, it was the performances. Ryan Gosling's not the strongest singer on the planet. It's the character he plays and the way he bounces off of Emma Stone. And just the beauty of that movie, the light of it, I don't know. I love that film. My second choice.
It's great. It's tremendous.
Is Sweeney Todd. I love Sweeney Todd so much. It's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite Tim Burton movie outside of Edward Scissorhands. And I think I love the music. I loved the characters. I loved the tone. I loved the way it looked. I loved Helena Bonham Carter. I loved Johnny Depp in that movie. That I had not seen or heard the Sweeney Todd music prior to seeing that film, and it was just, I don't know, the gothic nature of it. It's almost like a Sleepy Hollow movie with music in it, in the sense of just the way it looks. I loved that Burton style, that gothic. Like almost, I know he didn't direct From Hell, but like those very like similar like gothic type movies. I think From Hell.
Who was that? Was it the Hughes
Brothers?
Brothers?
Yeah.
Hughes Brothers.
Yeah, I think Albert.
But it might have well has been a Tim
It
Burton
was very
movie.
Burton-esque, but Sweeney Todd to me was just. I always found it to be terrifying and also somewhat beautiful. I always just like anytime anyone would get in his chair and he would have that blade near them. It was bless you. It was very, very intense, but it was also just gorgeously choreographed and beautiful singing and beautiful writing. Isn't that Sondheim? Isn't Sondheim do? Is that?
Yeah.
Am I wrong on that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
See, it's interesting. I really do like that movie, but I think I like it more as a movie than a musical.
Interesting.
Because the operatic tone of the music, like the music does nothing for me. Like whenever it's time for them to start singing, I almost want to get through the song. So see, like that song does nothing for me. So I kind of want to like get through all of their. You're only making it worse. I don't know, Shar. How do you feel about Sweeney Todd?
I love Sweeney Todd, man.
I think that Johnny Depp is not a good singer.
Neither was Ryan
his
Gosling.
Voice just sound kind of flat and thin. No, I know. I like the Sweeney Todd music. I like the aesthetic of Burton, but it didn't get to me.
And I am aware of how out of tune I sound.
I'm glad Kevin likes it.
Yeah.
No, you sound fantastic, BDK. We're gonna sing this at the 100
Can
show.
we?
We're gonna take out an acoustic guitar.
Can Jake do a solo?
I think I have somewhere I have to be.
The Sweeney Todd soundtrack from start to finish. All right, audience picks. Arthur Mingo also chooses Sweeney Todd, the demon
Really?
barber of Fleet Street. Yes.
Thank you, Arthur.
John Ratzenberger says if the Blues Brothers counts as a musical, it's his pick. Well, John, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Right? Am I wrong?
No,
Blues
it
Brothers
is
is
not
not a
a
musical.
musical.
It's
It
not
is
a
not.
musical. No. All right.
You
Kimberly
lose!
Sue, Zach Peters, and others chose La La Land, and Kelly Ray chose Moana. Now, Moana counts. The
Yeah.
Disney musicals
Disney,
count,
yeah.
right? Like
wait, I have a question. Would
yes.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory count?
I don't think so.
Why?
It's not. Wait, what songs are in there? There's not a lot of songs.
The Imagination song?
No, I take it back.
The
There are a
Oompa
lot
Loompa
of
song?
songs.
The
Yeah.
Imagination song? The song that the Oompa Loompas sing? It's endless. I could keep going.
That was really funny. See, your puns suck, but that was really funny. All right, next week, reach out on Twitter using, in honor of the awesome Knives Out movie, we're going to play hashtag Murder Mystery Blend. You're going to pick your favorite murder mystery movie. And you can let us know your pick via social media at ReelBlend, ReelBlend. I spell it out as if people need to know what it is after 93 episodes. Or you can email us, and we have several people who do actually now use the email to let us know. And they're coming from all
I have
around
a
the globe.
pitch. We should play.
Yes.
We should do like a murder mystery dinner where like Gabe ends up dead and have to figure out which one of us killed him.
That's just mean.
But like, I feel like it could be fun because like I feel like our audience could like have different reasons that the three of us
wouldn't want to kill Gabe.
It's like rope.
If Gabe actually existed, right? If Gabe actually existed.
Hey, Sean.
Let's see.
Sean, I was just
Yes.
curious if you saw the article recently about Ryan Johnson's favorite book from the year 1950.
Wow, Jesus, wow. That is a deep dive. I'm old, Kevin, but I wasn't around in 1950.
Gabe's losing it.
Does Gabe know it? Does he know what it is? Oh, wait. It's got to be To Kill the Mockingbird. Is it something To Kill the Mockingbird? I don't know. What is it,
Ryan
Kevin?
Johnson's favorite book from the year 1950 is Chronicles of Narnia, The Ryan, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
We're almost 100 episodes in, and I cannot figure out what makes you guys laugh and what doesn't. I really can't.
All right, we're saving the user reviews for the ends of the show now. And Corey Holland wrote us a wonderful review that we want to read here. Corey writes, I listen to a lot of podcasts, most of which specialize in long-form conversations with actors and filmmakers. Happy, Sad, Confused, WTF, Armchair Expert, Idiot, Inside of You, Life is Short, Unqualified, and many, many more. I discovered ReelBlend very late one night after watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and searching for a Tarantino conversation for the ride home. Very quickly, episode after episode, I found myself loving this podcast. The difference between ReelBlend and the other shows mentioned above, those shows are guest dependent on my listen. With ReelBlend, however, I listen to every single episode regardless of the guest the moment it's uploaded and available to consume. The hosts, that is very cool. I love that. The hosts are obviously lovers of film, each one having slightly different tastes and preferences. Each episode feels like a friendly chat, debate, about great films with friends who love the medium as much as I do. And with the guests, they always cut to the chase and ask the behind-the-scenes questions that we all want to know, and do so because they are unabashed fans themselves. They even do this hilarious bit every episode where they constantly give shit to an imaginary fourth host they call Gabe. Blaming him for topic delays, time constraints, and production specs. I find myself laughing out loud at times. The entire show is quite engaging, super entertaining, and an absolute must-listen for every real film lover. Spelled R-E-E-L. See what I did there? And for the love of all things Tarantino, can we find a compromise, guys? Kill Bill is 2 films, 1 story, something Tarantino himself would concede to, not to be confused with sequels that are a continuation of the characters and world, yet different stories for each installment. I'm certain one of you would have thrown that wrench. LOL. Hashtag Gerald's Game Boy. Hashtag Dunkirk. Hashtag not Nolan's best. Hashtag this is not Kevin's mom. Boy, that's a lot. That is a review.
Wow.
That is
Well done.
I'm giving a round of applause to that review. That was fantastic. I love the imaginary game.
Could you imagine
really
if we did
funny.
93
Imagine if
episodes?
that was a
That was
bit.
true.
Yeah.
That was true. Like we really created a fake producer. How funny would that be?
Like if before we recorded our first episode, we were like, okay, guys, the way that we're going to make this show stick is if we invent an imaginary producer that we yell at all the time. So, you guys want to meet Gabe? Come to our DC meetup. Gabe is going to be there, and he may even talk to you. You got to come sign up, though. You got to let us know if you're coming so that we can plan for the space that we're going to have. We are solidifying details for some of the things that we want to do. It's shaping up really, really cool. I have some news I'm going to break to the guys as soon as the episode is over. Something really cool that happened. And you, in order to RSVP for the show, you can go to this website. I plugged it at the beginning of the show. I'm going to plug it one more again at the end. bit.ly, bit.ly/ReelBlendDC. We'll also have it on our social media. The meetup is going to be January 4th. It's Saturday, January 4th. So you can ring in the new year with the guys from ReelBlend as we get ready to celebrate our 100th episode of a show that was just supposed to be for a couple of weeks and talk about the Oscars for a little bit. So if you don't know yet by now, follow us on social media. We're at ReelBlend. The boys are at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell. drop us a review. You guys know how much we appreciate that. We will read it at the end of the show. And next week, we're going to continue the love for Knives Out with our interview with Rian Johnson. That will be episode number 94. Is that four? Thank you very much. So we'll be back then with a full-on show. And until then, Kevin.
Dunkirk!